Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So the day has finally arrived. We have NVIDIA RTX reviews out. We have hard numbers, hard data to look at. And unsurprisingly, if you are fans of the channel, much of this is probably not news to you. You're probably like, okay, this is kind of what I was expecting. But to a lot of people out there, this is not exactly the launch that they were expecting nor hoping for. So today we're going to take a look at both the RTX 2080 Ti and 2080, which are the two cards that have been reviewed today. And we're going to take a look at the community and kind of the reaction, because this is much, much different than what we've seen before. And ultimately, are these cards even worth buying? So stick around and check it out. Alright, so starting over here at TechSpot, we're going to be taking a look primarily at Steve Walton's review. Now, I've gone ahead and checked out Tech Power Up's review of both the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti, along with Guru 3D and Gamers Nexus's RTX 2080 review. So this is kind of a culmination of all of these reviews. Links to all of these will be in the description below, of course. But if you are fans of the channel, you guys know that I like Steve. I like the way that he reviews things, and I trust his numbers. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this real quick. So taking a look at the RTX 2080 versus the GTX 1080 Ti, which is honestly the most appropriate thing that we should be looking at, as the RTX 2080 Ti is technically in a price category in and of itself. These two are relatively similarly priced, so this is really the only comparison of any real relevance here. And overall, we can see that at 1440p, Steve found an average of only 1% faster in the favor of the RTX 2080. Moving on over to 4K, very similar results. The RTX 2080 Ti comes out about 21% faster at 1440p compared to the 2080, and 30% faster at 4K. So at 4K, we're definitely going to be more GPU bound. So overall, I believe the 21% that we're seeing here is probably due to CPU limitations more than anything. Even though it is a overclocked i7-8700K, it's still obviously not fast enough for the 2080. So that's actually pretty good news. And this is great news for all the 4K gamers out there. Now, this was the best part, I think, of Steve's analysis, and that's the cost per frame. And that's really where the new RTX cards are really having issues here. So as you can see, the GTX 1080 Ti, he's got it priced at $680. They're selling as low as $650. Some people have got them for $599 here recently, and that's new, not secondhand. And of course, you can always get them secondhand for in the 500s pretty regularly ever since the RTX cards were announced. And you can see here with the average RTX 2080, Steve, that's a typo, just a little heads up there, coming in at about $840, so that's even more than the $799 Founders Edition price, but this is the current market price. You're looking at $11.50 per frame as compared to $9.57. So that is a significant increase for essentially the same performance. Now, for the RTX 2080 Ti, once again, you did it again there, Steve. We all know that the price is $1,200. This is the Founders Edition price, and this is what they're currently selling for. It's coming in at an even worse value at $12.90. So this is pretty much what we were expecting, and this is a real issue right here. Now, the RTX 2080 Ti, it's a beast in its own category. It's $1,200. A lot of people are going to compare it to the Titan class GPUs, but those were never really gaming GPUs. Those were never really meant to be mixed with Geforce. Now, the RTX 2080 Ti, it is a Geforce card. The value of the Titan cards were terrible in comparison to the 1080 Ti, the 980 Ti, the 780 Ti. They just were not meant for consumers in that way. They're meant for prosumers, people that needed that extra hardware but didn't want to spend like Quadro prices. That's what Titan was meant to do. Now we have an entirely new class of GPU. The RTX 2080 Ti is uncomparable to the 1080 Ti. There's no reason to compare those two because one is basically 40% more expensive than the other one. they're on different levels and they do perform differently. Now, as you guys saw, compared to the RTX 2080, which is basically the same speed as the 1080 Ti, you're looking at average about 30% from that level. So the RTX 2080 Ti is about 30-ish% faster than the 1080 Ti. Okay, so you're spending basically 40% more money for 30%-ish more performance. Now, in certain titles, it will perform better than that, and other titles, it won't. I mean, it just depends on the titles. Now, Steve's going to go ahead and do a video tomorrow or the next day with a whole 38 games list, and at that point, we can get a little bit more information, and I'll cover that after that comes out. But at the end of the day, the RTX 2080 Ti is the fastest GPU out there, and for those of you guys out there that don't really care about price to performance, and anybody spending $1,200 on a GPU probably fits that bill. Now, if you're spending $1,200 and price to performance matters to you, well, obviously it's not the smart way to go, because you're not getting what you're paying for. But for you guys out there that price to performance does not matter, well, I mean, go for it. It's definitely the fastest gaming GPU presented to date. Now, luckily, it doesn't cost $3,000. I mean, that's totally something NVIDIA could have done if they really wanted to. It would have been an even worse value, but a lot of you guys out there would not spend $3,000, but $1,200 might actually fit that bill for you. So if you need the fastest, you want the fastest, you have money for the fastest, it's definitely the way to go. 4K 60 is no longer an issue. It was able to run all games 4K 60 pretty much no problem, and even able to hit 4K 120 with some tweaked settings. So that's actually very, very impressive overall. It's just the fact that you're spending so much more money for such a small-ish performance gain that the value's not really there. But like I said, if you don't care about value, it's definitely the way to go. Now, the RTX 2080 is the more interesting one because it does fall within a price category that we've had, and that's the same category as the GTX 1080 Ti. So its MSRP is $699, it's selling for $799, and as Steve pointed out, they're actually selling for even more than that. Relatively speaking, across the board, all the reviewers found that overall it's about as fast as the 1080 Ti. Now, ever since the graph came out from NVIDIA where they compared the 2080 to the 1080, I mean, it was very evident that it was going to be about 30-ish% faster than the 1080, which put it right in line with the 1080 Ti. So I've been telling you guys this pretty much since that graph came out. So the real issue then becomes is NVIDIA's charging you $100 more for the same performance. And honestly, that's not good. I mean, generation to generation, we expect to see performance gains at every price level. Prices can go up if performance is there to meet it. This is the reason why the 10 series was received so well, and I pointed that out in this video right here. So there was a reason why people were okay with the prices going up. It's because the performance matched. Today, we are getting similar performance for more money. Now, the features that make the RTX cards better, superior, the future, like RTX ray tracing. Well, nobody can benchmark that because there's nothing that can utilize it. So the value of ray tracing at this point in time, right now, today, is absolutely nothing. Now, I'm not the only one to go ahead and say that. I mean, I mentioned that beforehand. There was going to be no benchmarks at launch. So what are you going to do? You can't actually test these things. Now, the DLSS, that actually seems pretty interesting. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. And honestly, nobody was really able to test that either, aside from some basic benchmarks from that was basically canned in Final Fantasy 15. So you can't really take that into consideration either, because this was provided by NVIDIA. So it's not an unbiased thing. So most of the reviewers just ignored it. So the two big features that the RTX cards were supposed to bring cannot be tested and have no relevance in reality right now. The performance that they bring, I mean, on the RTX 2080 Ti, it looks great because it's faster than the fastest thing that we've had before. And it costs less than a Titan V. So, I mean, I guess that's winning nowadays. But at the end of the day, we're paying more money for performance gains. And that's just not a good thing. This is something that I predicted was going to happen quite a while ago, and it looks like we're finally at that point. The good news is it looks like the community as a whole is starting to figure this out. Last time when the GTX 10 series came out, none of the reviewers actually called them what they were. They never put the actual Founders Edition prices in their reviews. They just used the MSRP, and they misled people because that's not what they actually cost. This time around, everybody's using the higher Founder Edition prices. So I'm glad to see that. And it seems since NVIDIA is really the only option in the high-end GPU market, people are actually becoming more critical of this. If NVIDIA is going to compete with NVIDIA, people have to hold NVIDIA's feet to the fire. You can't just be like, oh, it's somebody else's fault. Oh, it's somebody else's fault. No, if we keep buying these at these prices, NVIDIA is going to keep raising the prices until people stop buying them. That's literally what their business model is going to do. There's nothing wrong with that on NVIDIA's side, but it's good to see that the tech community is starting to figure out, hey, maybe we shouldn't praise something simply because it's faster. Let's take other factors into consideration. So I'm really happy to see that people are starting to wake up to that fact. And honestly, I saw this video from Digital Foundry here yesterday, and they were talking about Metro Exodus and the RTX demo that they were given. I do recommend you guys check that out in the video in the description below. It was definitely a really cool video, but watching this, they flat out said that Metro Exodus in this demo is running at 1080p. And this is likely running on a RTX 1080 Ti, and it cannot maintain that 60 FPS. Now, granted, it's still early days and it's in early development, but this further confirms that the ray tracing features on these cards are going to be super demanding. And honestly, I don't know who's going to pay $1,200 for a GPU and run games at 1080p. I don't know who's really going to do that. Now, the 4K performance at $1,200, 6 months ago, a year ago, or whatever, people would have definitely spent $1,200 for that, and people still will. I mean, it is the only GPU that you're guaranteed 4K 60, so at least it holds some value in that regard. But those people are not going to want to play their games at 1080p. I just don't understand where they're going with this. And also, the ray tracing demo that they showed in that video, they also showed a lot of footage with just the regular rasterization. And honestly, I thought that looked better in many of the scenes. So honestly, is it really worth it is going to become a real issue here in the near future. Unless they can go ahead and double or triple or quadruple their performance over the next generation or two, I don't know how viable this ray tracing is going to be for most consumers. Because, when you're spending that much money, you're going to want tangible benefits. You're going to want better performance, higher resolution, and just an overall better gaming experience. And these cards, like I said, especially the RTX 2080, does not deliver that. It simply does not. For more money, you're getting less performance per dollar. Makes no sense. Now, where these cards are going to excel is in the lower level APIs, DirectX 12 and Vulkan. So in the future, I can see the RTX 2080 outperforming the 1080 Ti once these new APIs do become in full swing and they're used by all the major publishers out there. So in the near future, I can see that it actually take the lead. So NVIDIA is finally investing into some fine wine. That's what my guess is. So there's definitely some gains there. Performance per watt's obviously a little bit better. The 2080 does draw a little bit less power than the 1080 Ti, but for that more money, you're also losing 3 gigabytes of memory. The 1080 Ti is an 11 gigabyte card. The RTX 2080 is only an 8 gigabyte card. Memory bandwidth is about equal between the two cards. So, you're losing memory. You might have better performance in the future, but you get the same performance on today's games and likely near future games. So that card right there to me is dead in the water. This also pretty much confirms my suspicion that likely the RTX 2070 will be somewhere near the GTX 1080's level performance. I think it'll be a little bit faster, but it can't be too much faster than that considering the 2080 is on the level of the 1080 Ti. And there's only a 30% performance gap between those two cards. So you're basically asking $600 for a GTX 1080. And that card is probably selling for what? I think I see them on eBay for like $300. I think you can get them brand new for maybe $400. So they're asking a $200 premium on that card. I don't know. I'm just glad to see that the market's starting to wake up that, hey, we have to focus on performance per dollar. We have to focus on the fact that NVIDIA, at least for now, is only really competing with themselves, which they're not doing a good job of, and they're trying to get us to spend more money for basically the same performance. So overall, I would say, especially if you have a 1080 Ti, there's simply no reason to upgrade. That's really my biggest thought here. If you have a GTX 1080 and you were thinking about maybe going with a 2070, don't waste your time. It's going to be basically the same performance. Now, like I said, DirectX 12 and future APIs and games like that, they might perform a little bit better, but it's definitely not worth upgrading to basically the same graphics card. And as far as RTX and stuff is concerned, once I saw that Digital Foundry video, this generation of cards is not worth it. It's not going to perform well enough unless you have a $1,200 GPU and you want to game at 1080p. So that's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I can just tell you what makes sense to me. Well, alrighty guys, that's really all I have for today. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this launch? Are you going to pick up one of these cards? Did you cancel your pre-order? Are you going to just say, screw it, I'll wait till next generation? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say on this. And if you guys like this video, please hit that like button, please subscribe, please share with friends, that really helps me out. And that's all I have for today, and I will catch you guys in the next video.